Before our breakup, I had shielded my guy from a runaway truck and ended up in a coma. 3 years down the line, when I finally came to, he was getting hitched to another woman. Couldn't handle the heartbreak? I jumped off a tall building. When I opened my eyes again, I was back just a second before the crash. This time, I didn't move forward. I had spent over a year overseas in rehab and could finally eat, dress, and walk on my own without any help. These simple things that most folks take for granted felt like scaling Everest to me. Even the docs called it a medical miracle. After all, that accident had kept me in a deep coma for a solid 3 years. Everyone thought I'd never wake up, or if I did, I'd be just a shadow of who I used to be. But not only did I wake up, I had gotten so much better during rehab that soon I could stand and function just like everyone else. I had endured pain that others could hardly imagine and countless moments of mental breakdown to reach this point. I had waited way too long for it. I was finally able to pack my stuff and head back home to surprise Alex, who had no clue I was awake. But when I quietly rolled back to Alex's place after enduring the hassle of a long flight, everything had changed. The house had been totally revamped. The cat climbing frame I had designed, stretching up to the ceiling, had been removed and swapped with pink cabinets. My friends were blowing up balloons, my classmates were putting up decorations, and my aunt was picking out the perfect flowers to make a stunning bouquet. My boyfriend was dressed in a sharp suit, looking like a mannequin in a store window. A pair of wedding photos hung on the wall, showing a couple, the girl beaming sweetly. At that moment, someone holding a champagne glass accidentally bumped into my arm, splashing champagne all over me and quickly staining my clothes. The person gasped, and suddenly everyone turned to check us out, their faces a mix of shock, joy, and mostly embarrassment and confusion. My aunt nearly dropped the flowers she was holding, and all the laughter stopped in an instant. Alex's pupils dilated, and his face turned ashen. With hesitation, he asked, "Emma?" I forced a smile that was more of a grimace, unsure whether to respond. My body instinctively took 2 steps back before I bolted out of there. Autumn had hit the city, and the cold wind cut through me, with piles of dried leaves lining the streets. Walking on them, the brittle veins of the leaves crunched loudly under my feet. Because of my after effects, I wasn't sprinting fast. That short distance nearly drained all my energy. Soon, a pair of arms wrapped tightly around my waist. Alex had caught me. He held me close, trembling, and said, "You're back. Emma, I missed you." Tears streamed onto his expensive suit. I was back, but it felt like everything had shifted. Alex went to the girl's house to call off the engagement just an hour before the wedding was set to happen. My aunt gently stroked my face, tears pooling in her eyes. "Don't blame Alex. He's been through so much these 4 years. If it wasn't for that girl, he might not have made it." I felt a lump in my throat as I glanced at the corsage on her right breast, a vibrant red rose with a matching satin ribbon hanging down, clearly marked as the officiant. My aunt quickly covered the corsage with her hand, her well-maintained face showing embarrassment. "Emma, I'm not betraying you. I just never thought you'd wake up." Her voice trailed off, almost inaudible. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, and as tears threatened to spill, I said, "I just got back and need to adjust to the time difference. I'm going to sleep." I then pulled my hand away from hers and went back to my room, burying my face in the blanket. Tears rolled down in big drops as I curled up in pain. This heart-wrenching feeling was even worse than the pain I had endured during rehab. I couldn't help but wonder if this was just a nightmare, like the dreams I used to have at the start of my therapy, where I remained a helpless cripple. I would never be able to pick up a spoon, saliva would drool from my mouth, and I would never learn to use the toilet. I didn't know how long it had been when someone pulled the blanket away and the bed dipped slightly. I knew Alex had returned. The silence in the room was eerie. I finally sat up slowly, meeting his gaze. His shirt was missing 2 buttons, his tie was half undone, and his face bore dark bruises with a cut on his lip. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine. It's what I deserve," he replied. I understood completely. At that moment, the invitations had already been sent, the banquet was booked, and the bride's family wouldn't let him off easy for a last-minute cancellation. If I hadn't come back, tomorrow they would have exchanged vows and rings in front of everyone. The thought made my fingers dig into my palms, and my throat tightened as I asked the question that had been buried in my heart. Alex, did you think I wouldn't come back? Alex bit his lip, his eyes downcast. After a long pause, he finally said, Emma, I'll be here for you. I won't leave you again. He didn't directly answer my question, but the sincerity in his words cut deeper than I expected. Just then, Alex's phone rang. He pulled it out, and on the screen was a photo of him and that girl, the contact name reading, My Dearest Babe, the text color in pink, likely a customization by her. How intimate. There was a time when Alex had called me that too. Noticing my stare, Alex quickly pressed decline, but the calls kept coming in one after another. Finally, he turned off his phone and looked at me, a hint of guilt in his eyes. I'm sorry, she might need some time. After a pause, he added, But don't worry, I'll handle it. How long have you been together? The sudden question caught Alex off guard, and he tightened his grip on the phone. His voice was rough as he answered, A year. I closed my eyes. A year. While I was afraid of scaring him with my current state, my brother kept the news of my awakening from me. While I was struggling every day to learn to walk, often ending up bloodied, while I was trying to speak, my tongue cut from my teeth, while I was unable to button my clothes and ended up soiling myself. Every time I was on the brink of giving up but persevered just thinking that I would see him again, he had fallen in love with someone else. Alex's promise to always be by my side had not been fulfilled. He only stayed with me for one day before rushing off because that girl was sick. Before leaving, he assured me, I'm just going to check on her. Once I make sure she's okay, I'll cut ties completely. But that one visit turned into a week. Disheartened, I packed up the things he had given me during our relationship, ready to return them. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't pathetic enough to beg a man for love. And I wasn't foolish. If he truly cared, even if my brother had kept my awakening a secret, he wouldn't be unaware that I had been awake for a year. I always made excuses for him. He was busy, tickets were expensive, the distance was far, he had parents to take care of. By the end, I was the one who felt exhausted. This time, I was the one who didn't want him. Just as I was about to head out with the box of items to mail back, Alex's current girlfriend showed up at my door. She wore a loose dress and held a hospital tote bag. Seeing my stunned expression as I stared at the bag, she gently caressed her stomach and said with a smile, Alex and I are almost married. You don't think nothing happened between us, do you, Emma? Her voice shattered my sealed memories. The girl in front of me was none other than Mia, a younger classmate who had clung to Alex during our college years. No wonder my aunt had become their officiant. She had been in a relationship with Mia's father when they were young. Are you trying to use old feelings to keep Alex? She tilted her head, showing a naive expression, then pulled a pull tab from the box I was holding. It was the token of love Alex and I had exchanged back in school. He had promised to give me a real diamond ring in the future. Unfortunately, the engagement ring ended up on someone else's hand. Don't be silly, he knows he's a dad now, and he's over the moon. She tossed the pull tab onto the ground like it was trash, then leaned closer to my ear and whispered, Let me tell you a secret. Alex and I have actually had feelings for each other for a long time. Years ago, on the day of your accident, he was going to break up with you. In that moment, it felt like all the blood in my body had frozen. I remembered how Alex had hesitated that day and thought back on how he hadn't reached out to me in the last 4 years. Turns out, the love and reckless devotion I thought I had were all for someone else. As I turned away, Mia purposely elbowed the box I was holding, sending its contents scattering everywhere. Seeing my dazed expression, she couldn't hide her smug satisfaction. It was as if she was saying, Look, I still won in the end. But as she stepped back, she accidentally stepped on a crystal bracelet. She stumbled and fell down the stairs, blood gushing from her leg. Terrified, her face paled as she yelled that I was the murderer. Alex rushed over and shoved me, making me stumble. Emma, how could you be so cruel? Though my heart felt dead, I didn't hold back and slapped Alex across the face. I'm not as disgusting as you two. Mia's family called the police, threatening to sue me and send me to jail. My aunt looked at me as if I were a stranger, practically wanting to distance herself from me immediately. My friends and classmates whispered behind my back, calling me a crazy lunatic. But soon, the investigation results came out. The surveillance camera at my house had clear audio and video of Mia's arrogant, despicable face. Her fall and miscarriage were entirely her own doing. The day Alex apologized to me, I stood on the rooftop, looking up at the stars. What used to be a sky full of stars was now reduced to just a few. What used to be a sky full of stars is now just a few. Everything had changed without me even realizing it. Emma, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. Please come down. I beg you. My aunt had also come, saying, Emma, I'm so sorry. Don't do anything reckless. Look, when you start to despise this world, the whole world comes to love you. I walked along the edge of the rooftop, feeling like a leaf about to fall. Alex knelt in front of me, his head bleeding. He kept saying he loved me over and over. I was so tired. After a year of rehab, my mental health had taken a hit as well. During the worst times, I needed medication just to sleep. Back then, I naively thought Alex would be my salvation, but instead, he pushed me deeper into despair. I lost 4 precious years, my health, my ability to love, my education, and became disconnected from society. I would never be okay again. I opened my arms, letting the autumn wind tousle my hair, but my heart was surprisingly calm. As I started to fall backward, I looked at Alex and said, I curse you to never find true love. To my surprise, I jumped off the rooftop. I found myself back on the day of the accident 4 years ago. A younger Alex stood before me, with his head down, hesitating to speak. Emma, actually, You want to break up with me, right? As the familiar scene replayed, I couldn't help but voice the words he had kept bottled up inside. He looked up suddenly, shock written all over his face. You cheated on me with Mia. Considering your unusual behavior these past few days, you've been cheating for at least 3 months. I paused and let out a long breath. I agree. With those seemingly casual words, it felt as if I were discussing someone else's life. Alex lost his composure and argued, I didn't cheat. I don't know where you heard this, but I've never betrayed you. His voice trailed off. I think we're not suitable for each other. How ridiculous. Alex pursued me for a year and we were together for 4. Now he thinks we're not suitable. I let out a cold laugh as the clock tower chimed 8 o'clock. Snow began to fall and the traffic light at the corner flickered before going out completely. Everything was just like in my past life. Alex, I was going to give you a chance. If you admitted that you liked someone else, I would respect your decision. Unfortunately, you don't even have the courage to admit your mistakes. I took a step back, looking at him with pity. This version of Alex was young and vibrant, but deep down, he was so pathetic. I had only understood this after a lifetime. Just then, I heard tires screeching on the pavement and 2 bright headlights shone toward me, blinding my eyes. A large truck was barreling straight toward me. Alex, on the other side, was so scared he stumbled back, afraid the truck would hit him. But the truck suddenly crashed into a concrete barrier, swerving sharply back in Alex's direction. With a loud bang, a figure collapsed. The world fell silent. On the pure white snow, a splash of bright red appeared. A tear fell from my eye. If only Alex had come running toward me like I had done in my past life, throwing himself at me. Then the truck would have only crashed into the opposite wall. We both would have been unharmed. What a pity. My Alex, the boy I fell in love with during my school days, he never even glanced at me. Alex was loaded onto an ambulance, and I picked up the phone he dropped in the snow, just as a message came through. Just a minute ago, Mia couldn't wait to post a photo of her kissing Alex. The caption read, "He finally belongs to me." Many people left blessings below, including Alex's friends, who called me sister-in-law. Only my non-biological brother commented, "In this day and age, are people really this shameless?" But soon that comment was deleted. Years ago, my dad and stepmom died in an accident. My dad took away most of our compensation. Eric raised me. He even dropped out of high school to support me through college. During my year of rehab abroad, he was the one who stayed by my side. I dialed Eric's number, and the noise on the other end was chaotic. The Eric now wasn't yet the future tech mogul. He was just a small-time enforcer for someone. My nose tinged with sadness. Eric, I miss you. Eric borrowed a beat-up pickup truck, braving the howling wind and snow, to cross most of the city to see me. His first words were, "Don't cry. If you still like Alex, I have a way to make him break up with that mistress." He said this with a fierce look in his eyes. It was as if he was ready to roll up his sleeves and beat up those two scoundrels. I felt warmth in my heart. I remembered in my past life, when I woke from a deep coma, the first person I saw was him. He taught me how to eat, how to talk, and walked with me. He never complained when I got my clothes dirty and even helped wipe my drool. The hospital staff secretly mocked me, saying no matter how pretty I was, I wouldn't be able to take care of myself and would never get married. He even argued with them, saying he could take care of his sister, and she would definitely get married. During those dark days, he was my only emotional support. Now I realize salvation was always right by my side. Why should I stubbornly chase someone who isn't worth it? Fortunately, in this life, I didn't shield Alex from the truck. I was still healthy. Everything is a fresh start. This time, I'm the one letting him go. I jumped into Eric's truck and smiled firmly. Take me to Alex's house. I'm moving out. Since we'd broken up, it was time to cut all ties cleanly. The truck quickly drove to Alex's house. One entire wall was filled with all the awards I had won for dancing. I still remember how excited I was when moving my things into his place, planning everything here. I wanted to have a potted orchid on the balcony, a white carpet, an air fryer, and a vanity. At that time, I naively thought that this would be my home for life. I slowly packed those things into boxes, gradually erasing my past traces. Then I closed the door and returned the keys to the property management. After doing all this, I suddenly felt incredibly refreshed. It was a timely damage control lesson I had learned over a lifetime. Just then, Alex's brother sent me a message. Emma, Alex was in an accident. He lost his right leg below the knee. The location is, I didn't even finish reading the rest before I blocked him. After the weekend, I went back to school as usual. The whole department was buzzing about two things. First, my boyfriend Alex slept with Mia. Second, Alex was disabled. There's a third thing. My roommate Nina leaned closer to me. She's a know-it-all. Nothing that happens in the whole school escapes her notice. Mia went to the hospital to see Alex, and when she found out he had to have his leg amputated, she nearly fainted. As soon as Alex woke up, she broke up with him, saying she's still young and can't spend her life with a disabled person. They broke up on the day it was officially announced, even deleting their IG posts. Nina scoffed and looked at me. Emma, lucky you got away quickly, otherwise that jerk would drag you down for life. I stared at my toes, silent. Being disabled and abandoned by the one you love, what a devastating feeling. He should experience that himself. Over a month passed like this. I was getting more used to school life. Not only had I successfully raised my grades to first in my department, but I also received a nice scholarship. Just as I was texting Eric to share my joy, a message popped up in our chat group saying Alex was about to be discharged, and everyone wanted to throw a party to celebrate his recovery and cheer him on. I scoffed inwardly. What's there to celebrate when he's lost a leg? Then, several photos of ordered flowers and fruit baskets appeared in the chat, with Alex's friends tagging me. Emma, you haven't visited Alex once during his month in the hospital. You must come on discharge day. There was even a pin location for the hospital, a blatant hint. Had they forgotten how they congratulated Mia on her relationship with Alex when it was first announced? Now that the new girlfriend is gone, they suddenly remember me, the ex? Just as I was about to reply, Nina sent a voice message. Did you tag the wrong person? Emma, the dumped ex-girlfriend, has nothing to do with your Alex now. The chat went silent for a minute before someone replied, Alex is in the state? What's there to fuss about? Fuss? They're all cut from the same cloth. You have no idea. Alex lost a leg, but Emma lost her love. I felt touched. Thank you, Nina, my internet mouthpiece. I wasn't polite either, cursing all of them before leaving the group. I didn't even want to acknowledge Alex, let alone his clueless friends. Nina messaged me, complimenting me on being cool and rational, worried I might soften. How could I? I vividly remembered my past life. I wasn't that kind-hearted after that. The group chat settled down that day. I planned to have dinner with Eric, but his phone was unreachable. My right eyelid kept twitching, so I called his manager instead. I learned that a customer had caused a scene in the shop that afternoon, and Eric got hurt while maintaining order, sending him to the hospital. I rushed to the hospital, unable to reach him, wandering around like a headless fly. Unexpectedly, I ran into Alex instead. It had been a long time. He sat in a wheelchair, his cheeks hollow, his complexion pale. His right leg was just a stump above the knee. The dark pants hung down, leaving empty pant legs. Seeing me, he tugged at the blanket covering his lap, trying to hide his missing leg. His voice was a bit excited. "Emma, you came to see me?" I hadn't expected to run into him here. The wheelchair wobbled as it rolled in front of me, Alex grasping my hand tightly, his dry lips moving. "They all said you wouldn't come." I didn't believe it. We had 4 years together. I knew you couldn't forget me, that you still worried about me. I couldn't help but recall everything from my past life, including his hesitance on our breakup day and his cowardice in the face of danger. I felt a wave of nausea. Just then, Eric walked past. I pried Alex's fingers off, one by one. With a blank expression, I said, "You're mistaken. I'm not here for you. I'm looking for my brother." After that, I ignored Alex's ashen face and ran straight toward Eric. He was the only one I cared about in this world. At that moment, Alex's friends arrived with flowers and a fruit basket to pick him up. One of them, with keen eyes, exclaimed, "Isn't that Emma?" I knew it. She says she won't come, but she can't let go of Alex. But who's that guy next to her? They look pretty close. I focused solely on checking Eric's injuries, confirming he was okay, before pulling him away. I hated the smell of disinfectant in the hospital and that group of people. "Hey, why did she leave? Really?" "She didn't wait for Alex?" Some sounded surprised. At that moment, I felt a piercing gaze on my back. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Alex's face darkening, his fists tightly clenched. Alex didn't like Eric. Even before we got together, he told me he disliked the way Eric looked at me. Now that Alex had lost a leg and was in great pain, I was filled with thoughts of the person he didn't like. He must have been suffering greatly, but I couldn't care less what he thought. I didn't harbor thoughts of revenge either. I simply said firmly to those around me, "Eric, you should quit." I probably didn't have the patience to wait for Eric to succeed following the path from my past life. I couldn't stand to see him hurt even a little. "My scholarship can support me just fine. I don't want you to work so hard. Night shifts are filled with all sorts of people, and fights break out every day. Today he was lucky and only needed a couple of stitches on his forehead. Who knows what might happen next time? You don't understand. It looks worse than it is. It doesn't hurt at all." He tried to lighten the mood, but before he could finish, I hugged him. He was so thin that it felt uncomfortable to hold him. "Eric, when I found out you were in the hospital, I thought of every possible worst outcome. If anything happens to you, I would really go crazy." My voice choked. "If anything happens to you, I would really go crazy." My voice choked. My luck had been terrible in my past life. I was abandoned by my lover and betrayed by my family. The only one who never gave up on me was this brother without blood ties. I hadn't been strong. I endured 3 years in a hospital bed and 1 year of rehab, but I couldn't last even 12 days back home. Since I had a second chance, he had always protected me. And now, I would protect him. The sudden embrace made Eric's chest tense, and after a long while, he gently patted my head. "What are you saying? I'm your brother." He looked as dignified as ever. After a moment, his voice softened. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Later that night, back in my dorm, I used my scholarship savings to buy Eric a computer online. I knew Eric was a genius in this area, and in the near future, he would use his talent to achieve great things in computing. In my past life, he had worked whilst taking care of me, exhausting himself completely. This time, I would do everything possible to relieve his worries and help him succeed sooner. Suddenly, a strange call came in. When I answered, no one spoke. Only shallow breathing was heard. I tried saying hello a few times, and just as I was about to hang up, a hoarse voice said, "When did you move out? Why didn't you tell me?" It was Alex. "You didn't take the keys. Don't you plan on coming back?" How ridiculous. Was I supposed to stay there for Christmas? "Alex, we broke up." I reminded him kindly. "You were the one who didn't want me." There was a long silence on the line. Just as I was about to hang up, he spoke again. "I regret it." Regret? Was it genuine regret? Or was it because Mia had ruthlessly dumped him that he was remembering my good side? So what? So, can you come back? Absolutely not. I firmly refused. I wasn't some dog that would wag its tail and come back. Absolutely not. I firmly refused. I wasn't some dog that would wag its tail and come back at anyone's beck and call. Though my childhood experiences left me craving love and feeling insecure, I still had some pride. The moment I discovered his infidelity, he had already died in my heart. I hung up decisively and blocked the number. Finally living another life. No one can disgust me. The next day, I went to the cafeteria with Nina for breakfast. Throughout the meal, she seemed hesitant and out of sorts, stirring her bowl of porridge until it was nearly mush. Noticing she was preoccupied, I asked what was wrong. After hesitating, she cautiously looked at my face and said, "I got a message that Alex took a lot of sleeping pills yesterday and was sent to the hospital." She ran her fingers through her hair. "Oh God, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't say this, but I thought you should know." I paused my milk drinking and replied flatly, "Did he die?" Nina shook her head. "No, he was saved in time. He should still be in the hospital." I took another sip of milk. "If he died, everyone should chip in for flowers for me." "If he didn't die, I don't want to hear about him anymore." What was this even about? Sleeping pills, deliberately setting himself on fire, running into traffic, and finally jumping off a rooftop in despair? None of it compared to the pain I'd endured. What he went through was nothing compared to my 4 years of hell. After learning this, I went about my classes and visited the library, feeling utterly indifferent. The news of Alex's overdose spread in our department, and classmates remarked on my calm demeanor, secretly calling me heartless. Heartless? Compared to Mia, who cut ties as soon as she learned Alex lost his leg, I was practically an angel for never bad-mouthing my ex after being cheated on. 2 days later, the dance club president dragged me to buy props for the club. Once we got in the car, I realized the driver was her boyfriend, Frank, who was also Alex's good friend. I didn't want to be involved with anyone related to Alex again, but I held back for the president's sake. Who would have thought the car suddenly veered off course and took us to Alex's house? Seeing the familiar building outside, I kept my face stern and asked, "What does this mean?" The president glanced nervously at Frank. Frank was blunt. "For Alex, Emma, I'm sorry." Before I could protest, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me upstairs. As soon as we entered the foyer, the sound of shattering glass echoed from inside. Mia's voice cried out, "Alex, did I not make myself clear that I can't be with a cripple? And I have a new boyfriend now." "If you keep bothering me, he won't be happy." Wow, Alex's friends sure knew how to keep him happy, bringing in 2 girlfriends at once. Frank looked a bit awkward, and then a cough came from inside. It was Alex's voice. "Get lost. Liking you was the stupidest thing I ever did." With that, Mia rushed out, saw me, and with a bite of her lip shot me a fierce glare. "Mind your own boyfriend. He was my boyfriend when he had legs. Now that he doesn't, he's mine?" I was furious, but Frank pulled me into the living room. He rushed out first and locked the door behind him. What a jerk! Our commotion startled Alex inside. Facing away, he thought I was Mia returning. He shouted, "Didn't I tell you to get lost? You tell me to go, but you should open the door." Alex stiffened, turning his wheelchair to face me. He looked so haggard after a few days. His hair was messy, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven stubble on his chin, and his cheeks sunken, making his pale face look bloodless. When our eyes met, he anxiously grabbed the blanket draped over his chair, trying to cover his missing leg. But before he could manage, he fell heavily from the wheelchair. Pain flashed across his face as he struggled, but couldn't get back up. Desperately, he pounded the floor, tears of frustration welling in his eyes. Alex had once been the star of the high school basketball team and had won numerous awards in college. Now he was in such a pitiful state. I stood there expressionless, my heart unmoved. He wasn't worth my sympathy. I wouldn't help him, just like he never came to see me during those 4 years. At that moment, Eric called me. Just before I got out of the car, I sent him a silent distress signal. He should be right outside now. I told Eric I was locked inside. After confirming I was okay, he grabbed a fire extinguisher from the hallway and started smashing the door. Just as the lock was about to break, Alex crawled over, gripping my pant leg with red eyes. "Emma, it hurts so much." "It hurts?" I took a step back, looking coldly at him. "You deserve it." With a loud bang, the door burst open. Eric rushed in, grabbing my shoulders. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, ready to leave with him. Alex, struggling against the coffee table, couldn't lift his body. He called out to my back, "I was wrong before. I shouldn't have hurt you. Emma, please don't hate me, okay?" I didn't turn back. Hate? It was more like disgust. Outside the hall, Frank lay on the ground, bruised and groaning, scaring the president to near tears. Looks like Eric didn't hold back when he hit him. I didn't spare him any mercy and kicked Frank as I passed, making the president cry even louder. Alex was unforgivable, but Frank was worse for kidnapping. Eric drove me back to school, reassuring me not to be afraid. He rented a place near campus to look after and protect me, giving me all his earnings from mobile games, far more than what I spent on his computer. He patted my head. "Emma, things will get better. With me around, no one can bully you." I nodded. That evening, the president came to find me saying Frank was in the hospital, claiming they only wanted to help Alex out of pity, and even if they didn't warn me, they shouldn't have gone that hard on Frank. If your boyfriend was secretly flirting with other girls and broke up with you while you were planning your future together, would you forgive him? And if he had an accident, lost a leg, and came back to you after being dumped by other girls, would you forgive him? The president bit her lip, speechless. If you can't forgive him, why do you expect me to forgive? In the end, she apologized to me. Another 2 weeks passed, and Alex actually returned to school. Determined not to use a wheelchair, he came on crutches. Unfortunately, on his first day back, it snowed overnight, making the ground slippery. When he saw me, he feigned casualness and tried to greet me. But as soon as he raised his hand, he fell right into the snow. Good-hearted classmates helped him up, only to discover his right pant leg was empty and carried him on their backs, kindly asking which classroom he needed to go to. At that moment, Alex's facade of strength and remaining pride crumbled. His face paled as he muttered he didn't need help, which only made others think he was shy. In class, he only made others think he was shy. In class, he chose a seat in the back row. Alex had once been a campus superstar, known by nearly everyone. Girls in the front row frequently turned around, whispering and deliberately peeking at his leg. With just one leg left, he couldn't show off anymore. Alex dropped his gaze, feeling humiliated. He heard them. The next class was physical education. Because the snow hadn't been completely cleared, the teacher opted for class in the gym. I was taking gymnastics, and after practice, I went to get some water, unexpectedly bumping into Alex sitting in the stands. His gaze fixed on the basketball players not far away, his hand unconsciously clutching his right pant leg. Alex had been born to play basketball, representing the school for 3 years and winning numerous trophies. Unfortunately, he could never play again. After finishing my water, I prepared to leave. A voice came from behind me. "If I had chosen to save you when the truck was coming, would everything be different?" I didn't reply. Even if he had another chance, he wouldn't come to save me. Selfish people are always selfish. It's only because the price was too painful that he regretted it now. Just then, a peal of silver laughter rang out nearby. Alex and I followed the sound and saw Mia laughing as she hid in a guy's embrace, who even kissed her ear. Alex's expression darkened as he turned away. Just 2 months in, and Mia already had a new love. Well, who can truly love one person wholeheartedly without ever changing their mind? Except for that fool from my past life who pushed away his lover and got hit by a car. I turned to leave, but Alex suddenly got up and grabbed my hand. "Emma, can you give me another chance?" His voice was choked with emotion. "I shouldn't have been so blind cheating with Mia. It's only now that I realize I only love you." I pulled my hand away, and in his hopeful gaze, I faintly curled my lips. "Unfortunately, I don't love you anymore. Not only do I not love you, but I also feel disgusted for having once loved you." Alex stumbled a few steps, nearly falling to the ground. The next day, Alex dropped out of school. Someone who once stood on cloud 9 couldn't accept their fall to the ground. Time quickly flew by to the day of the college dance competition. In my past life, I had filled out the registration form to participate, but I never made it to the competition. I became a vegetable after an accident. Even if I recovered, I could never dance again. That became a lasting pain and regret in my heart. So this time, I prepared an original dance and practiced it carefully for a long time. The performance was a success. I was once again surrounded by flowers and applause, and I represented the school to win first place. After the competition, I held the trophy, ready to find Eric to celebrate. But unexpectedly, I ran into Alex. whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He must have gotten the news from somewhere and had been waiting outside the theater. He held a bouquet of flowers, awkwardly turning his wheelchair to present them with both hands. I promised you that if you won a prize in this competition, I'd buy you a bouquet of red roses. Congratulations, Emma, for finally getting what you wished for. Alex looked even weaker than before, his eye sockets deeply sunken, and it seemed like he had to catch his breath just to say a few words. But even with his pitiful appearance and his reference to his past promises, my heart remained unmoved. I straightened my back and didn't even glance back as I descended the steps with the crowd. The most heartless response is never rejection, but indifference. Soon, New Year's Eve arrived. Eric and I decorated our small apartment beautifully. We sat together in front of the TV to watch the New Year's Eve gala. Half a month ago, I received an invitation to perform on a popular television show. It was pre-recorded. Today it would air. I watched the show while eating the dumplings Eric had made for me. He was eagerly waiting for my appearance. Finally, when it was my turn to go on stage, Eric's eyes lit up. He even rewound the footage to record it on his phone to watch repeatedly. It was almost midnight, and the host of the program began the countdown. As they counted down to 1, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Emma, congratulations on finally becoming the person you wanted to be. I'm genuinely happy for you. I immediately blocked the number. I could guess who it was. After graduating in my senior year, I successfully joined the most famous dance troupe in the country. Eric's company also got on the right track. On my birthday, he presented me with a passbook filled with several zeros. This money is enough for us to buy a home of our own, Emma. I promised I wouldn't let you live a drifting life anymore, and I've done it. It's still not enough. I shook my head, extending my left hand in response to Eric's surprised gaze. I still need a diamond ring. Eric laughed and cried at the same time, like a madman. I thought you didn't know my feelings. Silly. How could you truly love someone and not know? How could you truly love someone and not know? Our wedding soon approached. The guest list wasn't long, but it was filled with friends who had genuinely helped me over the years. Nina cried like a rain-soaked pear blossom as Eric and I exchanged rings. Emma, you deserve the best happiness in the world. At the end of the ceremony, I raised my glass to toast the guests. Unexpectedly, I spotted a familiar figure in the crowd. Our eyes met, but the person hurriedly turned away. I didn't care and held on to Eric's hand. The next day, a news headline read, "A disabled man fell from a high building and unfortunately died on the spot."